Hello and welcome to the HR People Pod, the CIPD's fortnightly exploration of the topical stories in the world of work and those in particular impacting the profession. My name's David D'Souza, I'm Director of Profession at the CIPD, and you join us, it's a Halloween special. We'll be just past Halloween when you listen to it, but today is a spooktacular episode and we have two special guests with us. So I will come to my right first.
Thank you, David. I'm Katherine Watkins. I am Group Chief People Officer with Sabio Group, which is a technology business in the CX environment. But I've been in HR for about 27 years, predominantly in the regulatory area, but half in-house permanent and then half contracting as well.
Fantastic. It's your first time on today, so thank you very much for making the time.
I'm delighted. Thank you for the invite.
But Danny, it's not your first time, is it? You're a regular.
Good morning. I'm Danny Mortimer. I'm the Chief Executive NHS Employers. I'm also a council member of ACAS, and this is my third time, I think, on the pod.
Which is more than me. You've overtaken me. I think that's how it works. So we're going to talk some spooky bits at the start, but just to give people a kind of preview of what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk a bit about the impact the profession makes on businesses. There's quite a bit in the media at the moment around HR and the profession more broadly and whether it really adds value. We're going to talk to two experienced practitioners about how it does. We're going to talk a little bit about the Employment Rights Bill and potential changes to that, but also the implications of that. And finally, we're going to talk about AI and performance management. But before we do, it's Halloween! Danny appears really unimpressed by that. Danny, what's your favourite scary movie?
So I have to confess, I don't like scary movies because I don't enjoy being scared. So my favourite scary movie is probably not that scary at all. It's probably Sixth Sense, thinking about it, which isn't that scary, but that's probably as much as I can cope with.
What have the Sixth Sense and Titanic got in common?
Oh, you're always good on these things. I really don't know what Sixth Sense and the Titanic have got in common.
I see dead people.
Oh, dear.
Oof. I'm talking about the James Cameron film. I obviously wouldn't make light about the tragedy in itself. No. I'm talking about Kate Winslet pushing people off furniture to save herself. Fantastic. Okay, Sixth Sense. That's a good piece. Yeah, and there's a good Forrest Gump theory that involves Haley Joel Osment seeing dead people as well. If anyone wants to go down that rabbit hole, Katherine.
I'm much like you. I don't like scary movies either. I'm going to go arachnophobia. Because if anything comes towards me that can run faster than me, I get a bottle of Raid out and I will run like hell with spraying it behind me.
Wow, does that include people?
Pretty much. Yeah, welcome to HR.
Well, whatever you do, don't run past you in the street.
Exactly, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you both very much. I'm disappointed, I think, and we'll come on to that. You know, HR needs to walk towards tough challenges and really I think we should be looking at those adrenaline flowing movies as a test. Recommendation from me for people for Abigail. More recent movie where a young girl is kidnapped but doesn't turn out to be quite what anyone expected. And if you're interested in the way that information moves around organisations, there's a really nice parallel to the way that folklore and urban legends communicate across communities. So a friend of a friend told me this and therefore it must be true is a very low evidential bar. And there was a 90s movie that followed Scream called Urban Legends. And it's based on lots of urban legends that were captured by a well-known folklorist and study of that. So it's a movie that I can enjoy just for the screams, but also feel that I'm doing something about it's like CPD. It's stealthy CPD. So less talk as we go through about ghosts and ghouls. But for everything that we're talking about today, just a reminder, if we mention a company that's illustrative, we don't know the detail of what's going on with that organisation, but we're trying to talk broadly about what's happening in the profession. And the first thing I want to talk about is it's about the profession itself and its essence. So we've got two really experienced professionals with me today. There's a lot in the media. I wouldn't want to overcook it, but there's more in the media than there has been in recent years around the value of the profession, the growing number of people in the profession, and the impact that they make. And are people focusing on the right things? I think that narrative's been around for a few years, but it's a really tough economic environment. And you can expect, I guess, of every function, questions to be asked of, are we getting the value that we need from it? be really good to get your broad thoughts on that. I think it's a really important question for the profession to face into. And I'll give people, as we kind of go through, a bit of the CIPD view on that as well. So, Katherine, if I start with you, and Danny, feel free to interrupt, throw things from the far side of the room, however we conduct this.
For me, HR is a fantastic profession. I love it. I also hate it in equal measure. I think, as you say, with the press at the moment, there's a lot of negativity around it. And sometimes I think our own professional colleagues don't help that reputation. But I am fiercely proud of it. And I do see the value that it can bring to businesses if you have the right people in those posts. And over my international career, I've seen the good, the bad and the ugly of the people who really help it and bolster it, and those who you just think, oh gosh, they're in it, but are they right in it? Have they just stayed in it because they haven't been able to break away from it? The value it can add to businesses for me is evident when you see the quality of the teams in the businesses, how they partner with the business, how they really understand the business. They're not just a back office function, but they get out there and they live and breathe what their client set are doing. That I do see, unfortunately, is where we see a bit of a change. Less HR teams are front facing. They don't spend as much time sitting in the business meetings with the clients, as I call them internally. And I kind of think, how can we earn our respect and our place at the table when we're not really understanding the forward part of the business and what they're doing?
So there's a proximity piece there as much as anything else.
For me, very much so, yes. You know, if we want, I feel if we want to be taken seriously, you've got to be forward facing, you've got to be out in the business. You've got to start listening to them and understanding what their drivers are in order for you to really do that strategy piece around it.
It's the trap, isn't it, that we can all fall into as people professionals. We exist to help the business be as effective as possible. So, you know, my line of work, that's to better care for communities, better care for patients. That's the reason why we exist. What we do isn't an end in itself, and there's a risk that all of us can fall into. That when we talk about people-based objectives or things we want to take forward, that it sounds like it's an end in itself. That it's in spite of the business, or it's and there's something about the relationship we have with the people we partner with in organisations, but also the relationship we have as executives with our boards in terms of the kind of direction of the organisation, and that our priorities are the business's priorities. Early in my career, the really truly effective, the kind of people who were role models for me, they were personnel directors at the time. They had slightly less grandiose titles. Actually, if they were asked what their priorities were, they were exactly the same as the chief exec's priorities. And they were, and they weren't just saying it; they meant it. And then the people priorities supported the organisation's priorities. All of us can fall into the trap of having kind of people priorities that seem divorced from the priorities of whatever business we're working in. And so there's some responsibility we have to take for that. And of course, all corporate functions should be subject to scrutiny. We're not the business. A HR function, a people function is not the business. It's there to support the business. And every organisation, whether it's in the public sector, in my case, or private sector, in your case, everyone is looking at their cost base. Everybody is in a really challenging kind of economic situation, and we can't be immune from that scrutiny. We can't have smaller kind of customer-facing, patient-facing kind of functions and a HR function that's as big or bigger than it used to be. That just, we're not protected from that kind of scrutiny and challenge.
And it's a really important, whether you're a student, whether you're deeper into your career, I think it's a really important reflection that we don't exist to get HR bundles of practices into organisations. We exist to help organisations with the problems that they face, and those problems will be highly contextual, and we've got a toolkit that we can draw upon to help it. It's a story that I tell about. A few years ago, I was asked at a conference, and someone said, "Can you help? I can't get my senior team to care about wellbeing." So I said, "Well, what else is on their agenda at the moment that means they can't get to that?" And they went, "They're worried about everyone being overworked and too tired, so I can't get any time to talk to them about wellbeing." I was like, it's the same thing, but you just need to appreciate it from their perspective and solve for that. And lots of the work that people might care about and they might want to see their organisations do more of you have to start with the business problem, don't you? So lots of the, why do you want fair recruitment processes? Because you want to draw the best talent into your organisation. You want to ensure that you're then in a position to support that talent to help it flourish, because the organisations need to perform. And we've just got to keep going back to those root cause challenges. Are there any kind of concrete tips you can have to help people review those? I think it's really important as a professional body, we give that message out clearly. These are expert roles that provide value to business. So we need expert professionals doing them that are well supported and invest in themselves. But you kind of said there are some people that you don't think are quite getting it in the right way, and others that clearly are. What are the hallmarks of the people that do?
I see the people who don't view HR as the neutral independent party. In a sense, we shouldn't have any skin in the game. We should be the independent counsel for the business. Come to us and let us help you work through the issues. You're quite right when you say, whatever is their worry, is the business's worry, should be our worry, because then that helps us provide that neutral counsel. We're not forcing them to think. We're also not having ideas of grandeur as HR to say, well, we can solve everything. I went into HR because I enjoy the politics of a business. I enjoy the egos of a business. I enjoy the sensitive side, but then I also enjoy the light side of it. And that gives me a really rounded view without thinking, I can solve everything. If I could, I'd probably be a CEO. I'd probably be running a business, but actually I quite like being slightly on the outside. I see HR that some people think, no, if it's not my way, it's not the right way. I think that is the danger where HR runs into it. And some probably the seasoned HR professionals that I've worked with and sometimes reported into, that they may have been in situ 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Are they a little bit stale? Are they, thinking that they're probably more important than they should be? But then I worked in very small firms where the HR person is very fresh. They're very much part of the executive, and they can bring that independence to it. The tips I would give is, don't think of HR as the most important role in the room. We're probably second or third most important role in the room. But it's how we then partner with the other ones in the room to actually make them bigger, better, and more ethical and more humane in what they're doing.
I think you describe it really well, David. It's about understanding the objectives of the business, and it's both about opportunity as well as challenge. Clearly a lot of what we do in our careers as HR practitioners is a bit more challenge based. That's often when managers need our help the most. But it is also about opportunity. It is also about how can we make organisations as effective and as successful as possible. And that's the kind of that's the starting point. And we need to be, we will have more, your example of the kind of well-being bit where just, it was about a difference in understanding and a difference in language. And it's about sometimes it's about us adapting the things that we think about or learn about professionally and kind of translating them, or being willing to translate them or adapt them into the particular context in a business. It's about, in the organisations I've worked in, I don't have a proper job in the health service anymore, but when I was in organisations that were providing frontline services, it was also about how effective my partnerships were, the alignment that I had with my other exec colleagues. What was the quality of the relationship I had with the CFO? In a healthcare environment, the alignment with my clinical lead colleagues, the medical director, the nurse director, hugely important because of the professional responsibilities they have. So it's about that. It's about being an effective team player. It's about rooting oneself in the organisation and working with colleagues. Because again, I think Katherine's touched on this. We're not a kind of sole operator here. We're not the kind of person who kind of sits in the corner and just opines. We're part of the team. We're part of the team operationally. We're part of the team in the executive space as well. And it's that ethos that, again, the people who 30 years ago when I started, 30 odd years ago now, when I started my personnel career as it was then, they're the people who made the biggest impact on me and I learned the most from. And they're the people, when I look around the kind of room that, I have a privilege of chairing in the health service, they're the people who really stand out to me, who are part of the team. They're absolutely part of the team in their organisation.
Yeah, and not sitting apart from it, judging it. Which
Exactly. Exactly that.
The worst thing that occasionally I do see, and it's just worth, again, reminding people that at the CIPD we ask people to be evidence-based, principles-led and outcomes-driven. Those outcomes cannot sit apart from the set of outcomes the business is trying to deliver. They should be all designed to help those outcomes the business wants to deliver come to the fore through better people, better performance, better understanding of where the organisation needs to go next. Thank you both. It's got a really serious tone in the room as well. It's a serious subject, but I'm looking down and I'm going, can we lighten it up next? And the answer is probably not, because we're going to talk about the Employment Rights Bill. So the ERB is currently going through another review period. Essentially, it's going through scrutiny in the House of Lords, where they are pushing back on certain elements of that bill. Most notably, one of them is around day one rights, and essentially whether it should be at day one. And then there's a secondary and I think really important conversation is however that period changes, what would a probation review look like? Is that administrative burden for the organisation? But if not, is it worth having anyway? So there's a range of things that need to be discussed there. You can get all of the information that you need on updates on that through us, and our policy and public affairs team remain deep in those conversations, trying to get the right outcomes for the profession based on the feedback that you've given us. And I'd like to thank anyone who's contributed either to our surveys or to our roundtables, or all the different ways that we've been involved there. But I want to talk about trick and treat. Trick or treat, I believe they're called, not trick and treat. That feels overwhelming. We're denying people a choice that they're allowed to opt out one of those. So as the ERB is going through, which elements of the bill, or even speculation around the budget coming up, because I think there's an interrelationship between the costs for organisations there. What would be a treat that you'd like to see coming out? And are there any tricks that you think might be a challenge for the profession? I'm going to start with you. Halloween me up on the ERB is a sentence that's never been uttered in the history of humanity, but we're going for it today.
I would like to see the speed at which it's all coming into play being exactly that, speedy. I think generally as a nation, our laws take a long time to get through and get into situ. If we can get that speeding through, I think that really will help the day one rights for a lot of individuals, which I think have been lacking for some time. I'm slightly fearful it won't be at the speed that I would like it to be, because the general lawmakers are probably less business facing, probably haven't been in that environment to really know, how it can hamper a company. So in sense of trick or treat, the trick is to get the speed going. The treat would be to make it fast. And I think companies then need to have that agility that they can change their direction quite quickly. They can update policies, procedures, they can train their teams quickly so that they can understand exactly when they need to be changing, how they need to be doing it. And that will be a very big challenge. So that could be the trick. Can we adapt quickly enough as businesses to incorporate that? Can we update processes, procedures, and the individuals who are going to be implementing it, and then train the business so that they know the rights? Managers, it's not just an HR ERB, it's a manager's responsibility.
It's really interesting, because I know we've got a lot of people who would want this to go slower or not happen at all. So it's nice to speak to someone, or it's interesting to speak to someone who's kind of like, just bring it and bring it fast. We will, just for clarity for anyone listening, we will have all the information you need to go that's ready to go at the point that this starts being locked in slightly more formally. So do keep coming back to us. The information is there for you. That's what we exist for. Danny, I could hear an intake of breath.
No,
from you there.
I'm in a very similar place. The parliamentary process will conclude soon, and clearly there's a back and forth in that, and that's what democracy looks like. But it is the final debate. We've had 14, 15 months now of debate and exchanges, and there are different views between different types of businesses and obviously our trade union colleagues and also the government. But we are in the final phase now. And then once it becomes law, whatever becomes law, we have to implement it. And we have to kind of get past the debate. And I partly say that as a public servant, which is what we are in the NHS, and partly with my ACAS hat on, it's then about how do we support organisations to implement the law properly and adequately. Very aware, particularly the work I've been doing with ACAS, that colleagues who run small businesses will need a different kind of support than organisations that I represent, which have huge infrastructure in terms of being able to enact these changes. Many employers, actually, there are things in the Employment Rights Bill that they do already. So I know in the NHS, we already have a commitment in terms of flexible working, the right to request flexible working, which is ahead of the law. And that will be true for some private sector colleagues as well, I'm sure. So there is something absolutely about, right, let's get on with this. Let's implement it properly. Let's get the Fair Work Agency set up and acting properly. These things are being done for, there are lots of things in the legislation that organisations, I think the majority of organisations really see the benefit of. And there are a couple of areas that have been subject to debate. The debate will be resolved pretty quickly. By the end of this year, the debate will be resolved. And then our job as a profession is to properly implement the law, because that will protect our organisations. It will get the best, enable our organisations to get the best out of the talents they have in the legal context that they have to operate in. And let's get on with it.
There's a really interesting, you mentioned ACAS there. And if I think about the flow of work that we have in quite a complex system, you've got investigations within organisations. You've got ACAS involved in mediating if there are challenges in that, and then we end up in the tribunal system if things cannot be resolved.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think people are very conscious of at the moment is that the tribunal system is overwhelmed.
Sure.
ACAS have got a challenge with the current workload, and on top of that, we're potentially going to see an increased inflow of claims because of change in law. That may be lack of awareness, or that may be some of the trigger points that the ERB may generate. I think there's a really interesting point you made around organisations need to be good to go, and it's probably just worth reminding the audience. If it ends up taking longer for someone to go, or for organisations and individuals to go through a tribunal process, anyone who's worked with a complex case will know how draining that can be for the individuals,
of course,
and for the organisation. You do need to get prepped. So what you are not going to want to do is to suddenly have 2 or 3 tribunal claims that are going to take an extended amount of time to resolve. And I know ACAS are launching some really interesting work actually around the future of how some of these things may work, and we've got the Fair Work Agency. But it's worth thinking there is a burden of risk to the individual and to the organisation of those extended periods going towards tribunal.
But if I may, that there's also something about different actors have different kind of responsibilities here. So as HR professionals in organisations, our job is to help our organisations comply with the law, respond to the new context. There is still work for agencies like ACAS and the Fair Work Agency to do to implement, to help implement the law. And there will be some things for government to do as well, I'm sure, in terms of the way employment tribunals run and can that system be reformed? And as HR professionals, we can help inform that, and our trade union colleagues can help inform it. But we also have to prioritise slightly as well, don't we? And there is always a risk with something as big and complicated as this, and as contested as this. And it clearly, naive, it's clearly been very contested in this last 14, 15 months. We have to kind of move beyond the contested bit and focus on what does the implementation look like? That's true for us as employers, it'll be true for the government, it'll be true for trade unions, it'll be true for my colleagues in ACAS. So it's also about that. It does come back to Katherine's point of, okay, it's done now. How do we make sure this works? Given it's been done, government with the democratic mandate has made decisions, it's gone through Parliament. How do we make it work, all of us, from our different vantage points?
And as you say, we're coming to the last throes of objections to it, reviews of it. We're going to end up very soon with, so this is what it's going to be. And at that point, everyone has to execute, but you can't execute in isolation.
No.
I think there's going to be some partnership work.
Of course.
Yeah, we'll continue to challenge the government where we think that's appropriate, but we'll also make sure that we provide you with the information that you need to deal with this and to think about it in the right way. Because I remember sitting in this chair, it must be well over a year ago at this point, with people going, is this going to happen now? I think it's a really interesting one, given the level of change for the profession, to get better understandings of how some of these mechanics work. Because passing laws is just interesting inherently. We've spoken about AI quite a bit on this podcast, as you would expect us to. But now we're going to talk about specific usage, which I think is AI isn't just one big blob of things. It's essentially a tool that you can put to a range of different uses, and some of those uses are more interesting than others. So this is news that JP Morgan have introduced an in-house AI tool to assist employees in drafting end-of-year performance reviews. The bank emphasises that the use of AI will not influence final pay or bonus decisions, with final responsibility resting on the individual. So AI is starting to creep into our workflows in the workplace. Is this a good place for it to be showing up? Does it improve the quality of reviews? Does it negate the need for reviews at all? We've got someone in the room who's an expert in CX and technology. I'm going to lean to you first, if that's okay, Katherine.
Phew.
I'm coming to my own.
I'm going to pivot. So, Danny, Danny, the king of TikTok.
Tickety talk. Yeah.
I think it's the nature of the beast. If we think, and I say it to a lot of my colleagues and my network, can anybody remember when we went to online banking? Can we remember the exact year, the exact date? A lot of people won't know. We've just ended up doing it. AI is that new direction of travel. And as a business, we are having to pivot what we're wanting to do with our clients. And we've got some very well-known clients who are centered around that CX technology business. We're now, as a business, competing to get that AI talent in. And we're competing. We're a smaller business, around 750 people. We're competing with the likes of an Amazon, who are now in the press shedding 14,000 jobs, wanting to focus more on AI. And we're thinking, crikey, how on earth we compete with the pay bands of an Amazon versus a smaller, medium-sized business? But if you sit there and ruminate and cogitate too long over that, you're going to be missing the boat. AI is running faster. We see it in the press that they're now thinking the AI bubble is going to pop and explode very quickly before the balloon's even been really blown up to its full capacity. Very much so for me, I'm working with my team in HR now to say, right, we've got to understand what is AI. How does it map into what we're wanting to do? How is it going to help develop our business? If we're looking at offshoring, what does that mean? Do we know enough about the talent market abroad in that AI spectrum? What's our demographics? We have an offshore centre in South Africa, low-cost centre for many, very strong, intelligent people over there, but also very underrated and recognised probably globally. My colleagues and my executive colleagues say, well, it's a low-cost centre, put it over there. I say low-cost doesn't mean it's the right thing. We should still be aiming to pay a good level for those individuals because we're after their intellect, not just great, it's saving us costs. So I think AI, HR teams need to really get into bed with it. You need to do your research, you need to train your individuals. Whether you've got a bias or none for it, you've got to put that to one side, because this is where businesses are going. This is where online banking, having a checkbook, is no longer you're doing it all on your app.
So specifically on performance management, though, so if we kind of bring it down a bit, in terms of that, I guess there's two questions here, right? How much value is there actually in the annual performance review to be destroyed? There's a question there. But secondly, do you think this helps or hinders that process?
I don't think we've got enough evidence yet to know how good it's going to be in that performance world. Good that some companies are moving forward with it. Is it inevitability? Yes. It comes down to the people who are then going to be running those performance reviews. How knowledge and trained up are they to know how to pivot?
I have two responses. One actually is back to where we came in at the beginning of the conversation, which is the role of HR and how we add value to businesses. Part of what we're all having to do, and I'm very aware of this as an old fart, is being more digitally literate and recognise that is both in terms of our knowledge. It's about how HR services work, but it's obviously also about how our businesses work. It's about what our teams are having to use. So there's a digital literacy point there. There's also a secondary action for me, which is there is a risk for us in the performance appraisal, whatever it is space, that it just becomes over-engineered. The thing I learnt 30 odd years ago when I, was doing my professional education with your your predecessor institute was that it's to enable a conversation between a team member and their manager to give and receive feedback, to understand people's performance, to understand their development needs. Often the process ends up becoming an end in itself. It becomes a form that's completed in an ever more complicated form, and a form that's become so complicated we need to get AI to help us to complete it. I've no idea how JP Morgan or anyone else manage their processes, but I know that as HR practitioners, we have to make sure that we hold fast to that purpose of this is a way, not the way, a way of giving and receiving feedback, of talking to people about how they're getting on, what it is they need to be an even more successful member of the team. And if AI can help with that, great. But it still doesn't stop the fact that Katherine and I need to have a conversation. And that's the bit that we need to kind of have a first, I don't know what the first principles are.
Does it help you reflect?
Yeah.
Does it enhance performance? Because that's why, quite often when we talk about performance management, we don't just mean if your performance is suffering, we're going to have a conversation. No. It should be we're helping people to excel and progress and improve. And does it speed you to that outcome in a way that improves it? It's I spent probably about 5 years reviewing and specialising in performance management kind of spaces. Obsessed with redesigning them. Like, there must be a way, right? And then what happened is I moved from HR to running broader teams. And I spent my entire team, I apologise to any HR professional I've had to work with, going, no, I've just got other stuff on. So it's really important when I worked in HR that everything got in on time and it was in our format. It was those kind of things. And then I started actually working, within the business in a different way. And I was like, this isn't the thing. And I am not advising this to any of our students, and please don't, this doesn't replace any of the valuable things that we talk about in our courses. Some of the best leaders I've worked with, you could have a rich conversation. It could be jotted down on a napkin, and that's going to set me up for the next year.
Yeah.
And I could work with someone with a really complex form that's supposed to engineer that. But if you haven't got the right leadership capability or people capability to do it. So I think if this helps speed us to a better place, that's fine. But if it's just forming a perfunctory function in a different way, it's not. It certainly might be a time saving, but it's not an improvement.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think it is about all of us need and will need different things. If AI helps, if AI prompts us to reflect in a particular way or to express something in a way that's still true to us. I mean, I guess the bit that we're all very aware of in a different area of process, which is the application process. People clearly do. You can tell people using AI to generate kind of applications and answer questions. That's fine. We all need prompts and things, but it still has to be true. It still has to be authentic to us, and that's the bit that we have to rely on candidates. That's the bit we have to kind of have in our kind of performance, whatever we call them, discussions.
Fantastic. If you are a CIPD member and you're listening today, I have two requests. One, please do fill in your CPD record. And that's for us to make sure that we're assuring standards, but that's also for you to make sure that you're reflecting on, during your busy working lives, what you've learned and what you need to do going forward. Secondly, please do let people know about this podcast if you're listening to it and you're enjoying it. Apparently, if all of the people who listen to this podcast told 5 more people the next day, and all of those people told a further 5 people the following day, we would cover the entire planet within just over a week. And that has to be the ambition for next time that we're kind of coming back in a fortnight's time. I'd like the entire planet listening to the wisdom that we have in this room. That's I actually did the maths on that, by the way. The issue I've got is that you'd have to tell 5 unique people, but it's a bit complex. So we won't go into that in detail, but it's fun.
Next time. Next time.
Let's not get into a conversation of what's unique.
If you wonder what I do when I'm not sleeping, it's that kind of thing. So that's all for us from today. I'd like to thank our guest, Katherine Watkins. First timer, amazing. Thank you very much. Danny Mortimer, it's a delight to have you back. For sharing your thoughts and your experience within it. We'll include a link to a number of useful resources discussed in the episode in the show notes. In particular, the ERB, please do keep coming back to us. And we've done a stack of work on AI, ethical frameworks, applications and organisations that just doesn't get used enough. Anyone who's looked at our content in the last 2 months, we have a 96% renewal rate for that group of people. The challenge we've got is just making sure that people are aware of the good stuff that we do. And CIPD members do. We've also got an ERB rights bill tracker that's really worth people kind of keeping a look at for changes there. And we recently published a report, UK Industrial Relations, A Future with Trade Unions. So if you are thinking that may change in your organisation, or you're established with a union and you'd like to think about it in a different way, please do have a look at that. This comes out every fortnight. It's been absolutely a delight listening to two people talk smart things. I'm David D'Souza, and this is the HR People Pod. Thank you very much.